So let's take a look at this phone. This is the S22 Ultra, Samsung's flagship phone that came out in February of 2022. In this video, I'm going to do a very brief review about it, go over some of the basic specs, and give you guys my thoughts on it and tell you whether or not it's worth it approximately 4 months after the initial release date. So let's get right to it. So let's actually get the pricing specs out of the way first. When the phone first came out in February of 2022, the 128GB variant actually started at $1,200. But now, that's not the case at all. On Amazon, you can get the 128GB variant for as low as $950, which is definitely a lot cheaper than when it first came out. The version I currently have actually has 512GB of base storage, 12GB of RAM, and I was able to get this variant for $1,150 on Amazon. So definitely on the more affordable side compared to when the phone first came out. As far as the chipset is concerned, it actually varies for Samsung phones depending on what market you're actually in. So for the US market, you're going to be getting the Snapdragon version. So consequently, I do have Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. But on the other hand, if you're in a market outside of the US, you're going to be getting the Exynos version. So now let's actually go ahead and talk about the display. The display on this phone is incredibly bright, as you may have already guessed, in classic Samsung fashion. This phone is actually rated to have a 17 nits of max brightness, which is incredibly bright compared to other phones. If you actually go ahead and go into the settings here, there's an option for extra brightness. So if you have extra brightness enabled, it is just massively bright, coupled with the screen resolution. So outside of the box, when you first unbox the phone, screen resolution is actually going to be locked at full HD. But what you want to do is go ahead and enable the quad HD to get yourself the best resolution possible. Obviously, that is going to take a little bit of a toll on your battery life. But again, if you want to use this phone to its full capability, then I suggest actually enabling that feature. So while we're on the topic of display, I want to talk about another element of the display over here, the refresh rate. So as you may already have guessed, this phone does have smooth 120Hz refresh rate, just like a lot of other phones and a lot of other flagship in this price range. But the one thing I want to touch on is that this is an adaptive refresh rate. So a lot of other phones in this price range can only go as low as 10 Hz, but this phone actually has the ability to go to 1 Hz. So when you just leave the phone idle on the table, then it'll just cycle its refresh rate all the way down to 1 Hz to conserve battery. And as you can see on the top left corner over here, if you enable it in developer options, it shows you the current refresh rate of the phone. So since I'm not actually doing anything with the screen of the phone, it cycled back down to 24 Hz, but the moment I touch the screen, it cycles back up to 120 Hz. So as far as the screen size is concerned, this phone is a little bit more on the bigger end. The screen size for this phone is actually 6.8 inches, which is definitely big compared to other phones. Just for context, the iPhone 13 Pro Max has a 6.7 inch screen. So this phone is, 0.1 inches bigger than that one. And I can definitely see that for a lot of other people, it could be problematic. But personally, I don't have a problem with big screens. I actually like them. But if the big screen is definitely a deal breaker for you and it's problematic, then I would suggest that you probably go for a smaller screen size phone like the S22 Plus, for example. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually the camera system over here. I'm not a professional by any means, so I won't go into much detail, but this camera system actually has 4 cameras. So it has 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, 108 megapixel wide camera, and it has 2 other cameras. So one is 10 megapixel 3x optical zoom and 10 megapixel 10x optical zoom. So basically, in terms of the 108 megapixel camera, it is incredibly great. You get like super crisp photos when you're actually taking photos, and even the zoom capabilities, I'm sure you've heard, compared to iPhones, for example, the iPhone 13 Pro Max, the zoom capability, at least up until the 10x and even 30x, for example, it is extremely crisp and detailed. You will be able to see a lot of detail after the photo has actually finished rendering. And if you take a look at the difference between an iPhone camera system and this camera system, there is definitely a difference over here. Like, I took a picture of the bench, I zoomed in all the way to 30x, and you could definitely see all the little particles. So in terms of the selfie camera of the phone actually has 40 megapixel wide camera. So there are a couple of modes here. There's a portrait mode, so it tries its best to actually give you that bokeh effect and blur background. Inside portrait mode, there's also two separate settings. So there's an ultra wide portrait mode, so if you're actually trying to take a selfie with multiple people in the frame, you can actually do that. There's also a singular portrait mode, so basically a selfie just for yourself. And then there's a photo mode, there's a video mode, and then if you actually go into more, there's all of these other modes. So in terms of the video capabilities of the phone, in terms of the front camera at least, has 3 different modes. So you could actually do HD at 30, you could do full HD at 30, which is basically like quad HD. You can also do Ultra HD, which is 4K at 30 or 60. So right now I actually have it set at 60, and now I'll actually be showing you guys some sample video footage from the front camera of the phone. So again, this is video footage from the front camera of the phone, 4K at 60 frames per second. But again, just judge and let me know how the video quality looks. From my experience, you know, from just like looking at the viewfinder on the camera, it looks pretty nice, I'm not gonna lie. I think it does a really good job of isolating both the subject as well as the background. But again, you guys let me know how it looks. So the back camera of the phone also has a few different modes available. So you can do 4K at 60 just like the front camera. You could do full HD at 30 frames per second. You could do Quad HD 60. You could also do 8K at 24 frames per second. In my experience, 8K at 24 frames per second isn't as great as 4K at 60, especially in low light situations. 8K video quality tends to be a little bit more noisy. But just like the front video, I'm going to be showing you guys a sample footage from the 4K 60Hz using the back camera. So again, this is video footage 4K 60Hz using the back camera of the phone. This is the 1x, and if I wanted to, I can actually zoom in. So this is 1.5x, this is 4x, and this is 10x. So you let me know how it sounds, or how it looks rather. But in my opinion, it looks pretty decent. But again, this is in direct sunlight, so it's not dealing with any harsh conditions like any lighting situations, for example. But yeah, let me know how it looks. So the next thing I actually want to talk about is the naming convention of the phone. So this is called the S22 Ultra, but obviously starting last year they actually just got rid of the whole Note line. So their intention was to actually make this the new Note. So because of that, the S Pen is actually already built into the phone, and you don't actually need to purchase it separately like you did with last year's S21 Ultra. And you know, this is basically a Note. This is not even an S anymore. Just like a Note phone, you have the ability to play around with the S Pen. I don't see myself using it as much, but I know a lot of people actually use this as a productivity tool. So what's new and improved with this S Pen is that, you know, the first and foremost, they actually decrease the latency a lot. So that way, this gives you the feeling that you're actually writing on a real paper with a real pencil. And I gotta say, it is very, very accurate to a real pencil with this decreased latency. But again, there's a lot of different gestures you can actually do with the S Pen. So, you know, if you actually take the S Pen out of the phone, it'll give you all of these different options. So you can create a note, you can actually view all notes, there's Smart Select available, it'll translate, so you have the option to actually translate between different languages on any part of the screen. And then it looks like it also has a built-in pen up app where you have the ability to play around with all these different drawings, or even create your own if you choose to do so. If you're feeling artistic, for example, you could actually go ahead and draw something. But obviously I'm no artist, but you know, for all you artists out there, you do have that option to get fancy and play around with the S Pen. So next, I actually want to talk about the battery life of the phone. So I haven't actually done an official battery test for the phone by any means, but you can actually check out this great article on Tom's Guide, which I'll link in the description of this video. This article summarizes it pretty well, and I think it's pretty consistent with what I've been getting on the daily since I've been using this phone. But basically, on the adaptive refresh rate, the S22 Ultra is getting approximately 10 hours of battery life, but if you go ahead and change it to 60 Hz, you're going to be getting 10 hours and 11 minutes of battery life. And you can actually see how this stacks up with other phones. For example, the S22 Plus or the Pixel 6 series. or even the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The iPhone 13 Pro Max is just in another league on its own, and that's primarily due to the chipset in the phone. The A15 Bionic chip is just incredibly awesome. It is on another level. Obviously, this doesn't mean that this phone has mediocre battery by any means. All right, with the 5,000 milliamp hour battery cell, it is still a very highly capable phone for the normal user. As long as you use your phone moderately, or even if you're a power user, I think you'll still be pretty pleasantly surprised with the amount of battery that you're getting. So going off of that, I actually want to go ahead and talk about the charging speed for the phone. So if you actually purchase the 45 watt power brick separately, then you will be able to get fast charging for this phone, which means that it'll charge from 0 to 100 in approximately 62 minutes or so. But again, that charging brick, you will have to buy it separately. So as you may have already guessed, inside the box you don't actually get any charging brick. All you receive is actually just the pin ejection tool, and then inside this pamphlet over here you actually just receive the cable, the charging cable for the phone. If you actually go ahead and open it, you receive some paperwork and then just the cable itself. So you don't receive anything else. That's one of the main reasons why you actually care about that fast charging. I think it's a great investment to go ahead and purchase it on Amazon or something. So this phone also does support wireless charging. So if you actually want to go ahead and charge it wirelessly, you can, although you will not be getting the fast speeds that you do with wire charging. You will only get speeds up to 15 watts. So then this leads me kind of towards the end of the video here, whether this phone is actually worth it or not. So I want to say, if you're a productivity person and you actually like a lot of customization options in classic Android fashion, you definitely want to go ahead and pick up this phone. I think this phone is definitely worth it. One other thing I actually forgot to mention is DeX. So if you actually enable DeX, you have the ability to literally transform this phone into your own computer if you go ahead and hook it up to an external monitor. That's always been one of my most favorite parts about these Samsung phones that they've been doing for years. But again, if you're a really good productivity person and you want this gigantic 6.8-inch glass screen phone where you want to carry out your day-to-day tasks, you want to maybe watch a movie or something at the end of a long day, then I think this phone is definitely worth it. Again, price for this phone is approximately starting at $950 for the 128 GB of base variant, which in my opinion, I think that's definitely worth it. Again, I'll have the links of the phone as well as some accessories like phone case, screen protector and whatnot in the links of the description to this video, so you guys can always check it out there. But thank you guys for listening. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.